All right, let's get right into it. We've all been told that getting rich is all about brains, right? You need fancy degrees, you got to know all these complex formulas. But what if I told you the single most important factor has almost nothing to do with how smart you are? Today, we're going to unpack this incredible idea. When it comes to money, your behavior is way more powerful than your intelligence. So to kick things off, let me ask you a simple question. Who do you think would be better with money? Okay, in one corner, we have a guy named Ronald Reed. He was a janitor and a gas station attendant his whole life in rural Vermont. And in the other corner, Richard Foscone. This guy was the whole package. Harvard education, Merrill Lynch executive, MBA, a total big shot in the finance world. Seems like an open and shut case, right? Well, here's where this story gets really interesting. One of these men built up a massive fortune and then gave it all away when he passed. The other, despite all his smarts and his fancy resume, got completely wiped out in the 2008 financial crisis and had to declare bankruptcy. So, any guesses who was who? You got it. Ronald Reed, the janitor, quietly built up a fortune of over $8 million. How? He just patiently invested his small savings into good, solid companies, and then he waited. That's it. It's an amazing story that proves you don't need a six-figure salary to become wealthy. So, you have to be asking, how on earth is that possible? How does a janitor completely smoke a Wall Street pro? It all boils down to this one big idea. Managing money isn't a hard science like physics. It's a soft skill. It's all about behavior. And that's exactly what we mean by the psychology of money. It's this simple but powerful truth that your relationship with things like greed and fear, your ability to be patient, those things matter way more than any spreadsheet you can build. See, Ronald Reed was patient. Richard Foscone was greedy and took on way too much debt. That gap in their behavior was infinitely more important than the huge gap in their education. This quote from Morgan Housel just nails it, doesn't it? A genius who loses control of their emotions can be a financial disaster. Foscone was, without a doubt, a genius, but his ambition got the best of him, and he took risks that ended up destroying him. It's the perfect proof that being book smart is no defense against your own emotions. Okay, so if behavior is king, why do we all act so differently with our money? I mean, some people save every penny, others spend like there's no tomorrow. That brings us to our first pillar. No one's crazy. Now really let this sink in for a second. Every single financial belief you hold about saving, investing, debt, whatever, it's all built on your own tiny, microscopic sliver of life experience. That slice might be just 0.000000001% of everything that's ever happened with money in the world, but it makes up something like 80% of how you think the financial world actually works. And that's why our backgrounds are so powerful. I mean, if you grew up poor, you're going to view risk and reward totally differently than someone who grew up wealthy. If your parents lived through runaway inflation, you're going to think about cash differently than someone who grew up with stable prices. Neither of you is crazy. You're both just making perfectly rational decisions based on your own unique history. But, our own personal choices aren't the whole picture. There are these huge invisible forces at play, which brings us to our second pillar, the unseen twins of luck and risk. Think of them as two sides of the very same coin. Let's take Bill Gates. Yeah, the guy is obviously a genius, but he was also incredibly, unbelievably lucky. In 1968, he just happened to go to Lakeside, one of the only high schools on the entire planet that had a computer. This gave him a head start that was just unimaginable for almost anyone else. What were the odds of that? The odds of a teenager back in 1968 getting access to a school computer like that, it was literally about 1 in a million. That is the definition of a lucky break. But luck has a shadow. At Lakeside, Bill Gates had a best friend, Kent Evans. He was just as smart, just as driven, and just as good with that computer. They were going to start a company together. But Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he even graduated high school. The odds of that happening? Also about 1 in a million. It's the exact same force, that 1 in a million chance, just pointing in the opposite direction. One got luck, the other got risk. So what's the lesson here? It's that we have to be humble. When we look at our successes or someone else's, we can't forget the role that luck and risk played. No outcome is ever 100% because of your own efforts. As Scott Galloway says, nothing is as good or as bad as it seems. Now for our third and final pillar. So, if getting wealthy means taking some risks and, getting a little lucky, how do you make sure you keep it? That, my friends, is the art of staying wealthy. And here's the kicker. Getting money and keeping money are two totally different skill sets. In fact, they're pretty much opposites. Getting wealthy requires optimism, taking risks, and really putting yourself out there. But staying wealthy, that requires humility, a bit of paranoia, and a healthy dose of fear that everything you've built could disappear in a flash. And if you want the perfect poster child for staying wealthy, look no further than Warren Buffett. Get this, 99.9% of his massive fortune was earned after his 50th birthday. His real genius isn't just picking great stocks. It's that he has stayed in the game for over 75 years. It's all about longevity. So what's his big secret? It's really simple. Survival. He never got wiped out. He never took on so much debt that he was forced to sell his best assets at the worst time. He lived through 14 recessions and never panicked. He just endured. And by simply surviving, he let the incredible magic of compounding do its work for decades. So when you put all of this together, your behavior, the role of luck, the importance of survival, what's the end goal? What is money actually for? And that brings us to our final and honestly our most important takeaway. You know, psychologists have studied human happiness for decades, and they keep coming back to the same conclusion. More than your salary, more than the size of your house, more than your job title, the single most dependable predictor of happiness is having a strong sense of control over your own life. And that is the true purpose of money. It's not about buying flashy cars or big houses. It's about buying freedom. It's the ability to wake up every single morning and say, I can do whatever I want today. Having control over your time, that is the highest dividend money will ever pay. It's priceless. So, I'll leave you with this final question to think about. When you're making your financial decisions, what are you really optimizing for? Is it just the biggest number in your account? Or is it for the most control over your own life? Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that the greatest wealth is the freedom to live life on your